So, I'm just an ordinary guy trying to make a living as a food delivery person for a popular app. Most days are pretty much the same. People place their orders at local restaurants, and I fulfill them by delivering their food. Pretty simple, right? Every now and then, I encounter a little madness, but nothing too crazy until the night I'm about to tell you about. It was a regular night, and I was busy delivering orders all over town. As I pulled up to a regular house, I noticed something weird about it. The front yard was overgrown, and the paint on the house was peeling. But what struck me the most was the odd-looking man who answered the door. His wild hair and mismatched clothes made him stand out, but it was his behavior that really caught my attention. He was acting jittery and constantly looking over his shoulder as if he was expecting something. I tried not to make it obvious that I was weirded out by his actions and just handed him his food. I was shocked when he snatched the food from my hands and gave me a crazy look. He snapped at me and said, "It's about damn time." Before I could even explain to him that there was traffic, he slammed the door in my face. I didn't want to lose the only job I had, so I just sucked up his disrespect and turned around to walk back to my car. But as I was about to drive off, I heard a faint knocking sound coming from the basement window. I was going to ignore it at first, but as I kept walking away, the knock was getting louder and quicker. It sounded like someone was desperately trying to get my attention. I was curious, and I couldn't ignore the strange noise. When I got in my car, I decided to turn and walk back to the house, trying to see where the sound was coming from. I was shocked when I noticed a woman's face in the dimly lit basement window. Her eyes were wide, and she looked scared as heck. She was mouthing something, but I couldn't hear her from outside. My heart was racing because I realized that something wasn't right. The woman looked like she was in distress, and I knew I had to do something. I walked up to the window and put my face in the window and asked her if she was okay. I was hoping the crazy man didn't come and catch me on his property, because where I live in Texas, people take trespassing seriously and almost everyone had a gun. With my ear close to the window, I could now hear every word of what she was saying, and I could hear the words, "Help me." Before I could move my ear from the window, I heard the voice of the man who I handed the food at the door a few minutes before. He was yelling. I moved my ear and turned my eyes to the window to see the man pointing his gun at me. I jumped to my feet quickly and started running back to my car. Then I heard the woman screaming for help, followed by the front door opening. I got in my car so quick and sped away from the house. I quickly dialed 911, explaining the situation to the operator. The dispatcher assured me that help was on the way and advised me to stay where I was until the police arrived. I was only down the street from the house, but I was scared, wondering if the man was going to come after me and find me to harm me too. After about 10 minutes, the police finally came, and I guided them to the house and pointed out the basement window where the woman was trapped. As the officers approached, the weird man who had answered the door earlier came running out of the house. He was shouting and trying to stop the police from getting to the basement. But the officers were quick to put him in handcuffs, and they made their way to the basement window. With a few strong pushes, they managed to open it, and the woman was pulled to safety. She was visibly shaken, but happy to be free. The police took statements from both of us, and the truth came to light. The creep who answered the door was her ex-boyfriend, and he was holding her hostage. My heart sank when I realized how close the situation was to becoming something worse than what it was. I was scared, but happy that I was at the right place at the right time to save the woman. The police thanked me for my quick thinking and bravery, but I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a regular guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. As the officers took the man away in handcuffs, I saw the woman crying tears of relief. She thanked me with a hug, and in that moment, I felt a deep sense of connection with her for some reason, because I know we could have both been victims to the sicko that pointed a gun at my head. After the incident, life went back to its usual routine, but now I approach every delivery with more caution than before.
This story was sent to us from Malik in Cleveland. I used to work as a food delivery person for DoorDash. It's not the most glamorous job, but it helped me make ends meet while I was in school. One night, while I was delivering, I got caught up in a crazy situation. This was a Friday night, and it was busy. I had deliveries back to back. Right when I was about to call it a night, I decided to just accept one more late night delivery at around 11 o'clock. The address was in a rough part of town, but I didn't think much of it. I've been to all kinds of neighborhoods before. The neighborhood I grew up in was rough too. My GPS guided me towards the destination. The streets were dark and most of the buildings were abandoned. Finally, pulled up to the house. It was a rundown, old building that seemed out of place among the other houses on the block. I took a deep breath and reminded myself to be cautious. I was walking up to the front door when I noticed a group of people standing around outside nearby. They were eyeing me down suspiciously, and I felt a knot in my stomach. I wanted to turn around and leave, but I needed the money, so I wanted to complete the delivery. The door opened slowly, and a man with a hood pulled over his face was standing before me. He didn't say a word, just handed me the cash for the order without making eye contact. My instincts told me to leave immediately, but I still had one more delivery for the night, and I couldn't afford to miss out on the extra cash. I walked back to my car, and I still had the feeling that I was being watched. The group of people was still there, and their stares made my skin crawl. I got into my car super quick and locked the door, trying to calm my nerves. But just as I was about to drive away, I heard a loud bang on the side of my car. At the time, the window on my driver's side was broken and could only go halfway up. I turned my head to see who or what it was, and it was the man from the house standing there with his hood still pulled over and hiding his face. He said, "You ain't going nowhere." He was pointing a knife at me through the window. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my phone, desperately trying to dial 911. But before I could make the call, the man reached through the window and grabbed my phone from my hand and then reached inside and unlocked my car. That's when I realized that the group of people were his boys. I was completely at the mercy of this stranger and his companions. I tried to reason with him, explaining that I was just doing my job and didn't want any trouble. He didn't care about anything I had to say. He demanded that I give him all the money I made from my deliveries that night. I had no choice but to hand over the cash from my last few deliveries. It was a lot of money, and I knew that losing it would put me in a tough spot financially. After they walked away with my money, I sped away, not looking back until I was a safe distance away from that dangerous neighborhood. Even though I was mad and wished I had protection on me to defend myself, I feel how lucky that I was able to escape that situation with my life. The rest of the night passed in a blur, and by the time I finished my last delivery, I was emotionally drained. I didn't even bother to report the incident to the police, because deep down, I knew that there was no point because I would never see that money again. That night was my last night working for DoorDash.
This story happened to me at the beginning of the pandemic when I first started working as a delivery driver for Uber Eats. One day, I found myself caught up in a terrifying and life-threatening experience that I'll never forget. The craziest thing about this story is that it happened in a nice neighborhood and in broad daylight. It was a snowy and cold afternoon, and I had been delivering orders for hours. The streets were wet and icy, but almost empty due to the weather the city was getting in the days before. I accepted one last delivery at around lunchtime and set out for my destination. When I got the location, which was a very big house most people would describe as a mansion, I parked my car and glanced at the delivery details. The customer's note read, "Leave the order by the gate, don't come to the door." I thought it was odd, but I chalked it up to personal preference and followed the instructions. As I placed the food by the gate, I noticed in my peripheral that someone was walking towards me. Instinctively, I locked my car doors and quickly made my way back to my vehicle. The atmosphere was tense, and a chill ran down my spine. Just as I was about to start the engine, I heard footsteps approaching from behind. Turning, I saw a figure in a hooded jacket walking towards me. When he finally got up to my car, he motioned for me to put the window down, and I cracked it just enough to hear what he was saying. He started asking me for directions to a nearby gas station, saying his car broke down a half a mile away and he just needed to get some gas. He was also carrying a gas can, which made his story believable. I was somewhat familiar with the neighborhood and remembered a gas station being a few miles away in the same direction I was heading. I told him how to get to the nearby gas station. That's when he asked me if I could give him a ride there. He seemed normal enough and it was very cold outside, so I decided to help him out. He got in the back seat, and I began driving in the direction of the gas station. "Hand over your wallet and everything you got," the person demanded, in voice that sounded threatening. I knew I had to act fast. Without hesitation, I pulled my car over and I handed over my wallet, hoping that they would take it and leave me alone. But instead of taking the money and leaving, the person seemed to only become angrier. He kept saying, "That's all you got? Don't play games with me." My heart raced as I fumbled to explain that I didn't have any more cash on me. But that didn't make things any better. I felt the situation escalating. Suddenly, he grabbed me by the neck, and I instinctively tried to defend myself. I started fighting him off, and I felt a sharp pain in my side as he brandished a knife. My adrenaline was pumping, and I managed to break free. I got out of the car and blood trickled down my side, and I knew I needed to get help. I could see my blood hitting the ground and leaving red marks in the snow. My attacker jumped from the car and ran away without any care in the world for whether I died. I got back in my car and struggled to get it started, then I managed to dial 911, praying for help to arrive in time. The police arrived soon after, and I gave them a detailed account of what had happened. A man came out of nowhere and said his security cameras caught the incident. He turned over the recordings to the police and they were able to ID the suspect and arrest him later that day. Never in my life will I give a stranger a ride after this incident. I chose to do Uber Eats instead of Uber rides for a reason, and I plan to stick to food delivery only from now on.